Alright, so part 3 of the valve cover gasket and air filter replacement slash spark plug replacement. Um, so here we are. Um, we're going to put the intake manifold back on. So I'm connecting now the harness plugs to the ignition coils. And do you see those green plugs? Those are the one that was connected to the bracket on the back end of the intake manifold. That one ignition coil plug is highly difficult to get around and plug in. There's a lot going on over there, as you can tell. Now I'm plugging everything in. Checking the hose, checking the lines, checking the wires, make sure I didn't damage anything. Usually, when you remove an intake manifold, you're always supposed to have to change the intake manifold gasket, but the intake manifold gasket looked fine. But because most technician or mechanic would say it's a gasket that is torqued down, so once you torque it, it gets already flattened. But again, you'll be fine. Everything looked fine, everything was good. So now we're going to put the intake manifold back on. So the putting the intake manifold is going to be a little tricky because, of course, we need to align them with the bolts and the hose where the bolts go and the nut. And at the same time, we need to put it where the line is connected on the right side with that middle hose line that made it difficult at the beginning to remove. And there you have it. It's in place. So I'm getting those harness that are on the back end of that intake manifold and putting them in that bracket, and then I'm connecting the two holes that connect to the back of the intake manifold with the clip. Some people may say to make it easier to work back there or see is to remove the windshield wiper and the cowl, but a lot of times if you mess with the cowl, they always crack. So I rather not touch that and just work my way around it or beneath it. So I'm double checking, making sure everything is connected back there. So I don't have to worry about it and forget because that is the hardest area to see. Alright, so I'm putting those two 12 millimeter bolt nuts onto the intake manifold. Remember, there's two nuts and three bolts. And then you're going to evenly tighten them down, but not torque them down. Once you evenly tighten them down, now you can torque them down. And to torque them down, they're about 25 to 27 foot-pound. Again, keep in mind these are aluminum intake manifold. So be careful. You over torque them or over tighten them, they will crack. And then you're going to have air traveling out of them. You do not want that. So putting the two bolts back on, or nuts back on to that metal line, there's a washer and a nut for each side. Hand tight it first. And then tighten it. Hand tight it, or just use your power tool. And follow with hand tight. Now we're going to put all these lines back in at the front end of the intake manifold. Remember, I marked these lines so I know what goes on top and what goes on bottom. Always, always, if you're not sure, when you're removing something, mark them so you remember where they go. Because there's so much to remove and to replace that you can easily forget. Now I'm removing a 10mm bolt so I can connect those back onto the intake manifold so it can hold in place. $10mm, and it doesn't need to be tightened too tight. Right there you see the line that I'm trying to connect the hose there. That's the PCV valve. The bolt that I'm taking off there, put it back in place. That is a 12mm. Now I'm connecting all the harness to the ignition coils in the front. That connection goes to the O2 sensor. Make sure all the cables clip back onto their designated area. So now what we're going to do here is there is that bolt that is in the back end. We're going to put that bolt back on to the bracket of the intake manifold. Right now I'm actually adding the line back into the throttle body, and I'm going to clip and connect all these wiring harness back together. And then all the brackets need to screw back in place. Everything here is like a puzzle. You unscramble the puzzle and then you're trying to figure out later on how to put the puzzle back together. But once you sit there and figure it out, everything comes back together at the end and makes a big, beautiful picture. With harness connection and wire cables, a lot of the manufacturers make it pretty simple where every cable fits every connection. Um, you you can you can't ever mix the wiring. They make sure the connection will fit only certain connectors. So they make it simple where anybody can do it. And if you question yourself that it's not the correct line to that connection, again, look it up. Look up the specs, look them through the manual or whatnot. I'm putting all the lines back in with the clamps, with the clips. Double checking everything, make sure everything's connected. If there's anything loose, then it belongs somewhere. So you need to find well where it goes. Here's that bolt that goes in the back of the mount of the intake manifold. So you got to go back there and kind of get it in there. And that bolt is 12 millimeter. Get your 12 millimeter wrench back there and tighten that in. Alright, so while we're at it, we're going to go ahead and replace the air filter. So on this air duct, there's just two clips that you unclip and then you can remove the air duct. The air filter, not so much too dirty, but it does need to be replaced. The key to that, how do you know if it needs to be replaced? If you look up into the light and you can't see through the filter, then it needs to be replaced. Now we put the new air filter in. Um, there's going to be tabs that will fit into two space and then set down onto the air box. Once it's even, then you will clip the two clips onto the air box. A lot of times putting a new air filter will be a little tight because it's new. So you're gonna have to fight with it a little bit and kind of press it in. I noticed the air box was kind of loose, so I'm looking to figure out what's causing this air box to be loose. So I noticed it wasn't tightening down, or it wasn't um, pushed into an area that clamps it down. So right here, I'm seeing there's a washer, rubber washer, where it's supposed to be bolted down, and it's not on the air box where you can clamp it down. So I'm trying to put it back in place, because you don't want to be driving and then you hear some rattling noise, and it's all it is your air filter box here, just loose and just rattling. Oh, here I am fighting with this thing. Alright, so I got it on. Put it all in place. Now I'm going to put the intake hose on. One goes in one end of the box here, and the other one connects to the throttle body, and the two clips at both ends is an 8mm to tighten it down, or you can use a flathead and turn it. It's up to you, but I prefer an 8mm. And then, last and not least, you connect the hose that goes right into the valve cover, and that should complete the job. If you have any comments, please put the comments below. Uh, please like the video. If you haven't subscribed to me, please subscribe, and I will be putting more videos out just like this or better. And if there's any videos out there that you feel like you need to learn or something, put a comment at the bottom, uh, request, and I'll try to get to it and put out some videos that will show how to work on things like that. Besides that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Oh, I forgot to say, make sure you put the air duct back to the intake air filter box, and of course the motor cover. You can't drive without the motor cover. That's the most important thing. And then last and not least, connect the battery. Negative and positive terminal. Remember, the positive was a 12 millimeter on this vehicle, and the negative was a 10 millimeter. Tighten them down, put the motor cover back on, start it up, vroom, you're good to go.